you with us here today. We are going to be talking about how to write Equus-oriented course books for kids and for grown-ups. We all write slightly different things, and so we're going to share some tips about how we write our books and some things you can do to write your own books about these very, very special animals. So the first question we're all going to talk about is, tell us, each one of us is going to tell you a little bit about the books that we write. And we're going to have about 2 minutes each to do that. So I'm going to hand this over to Terry. Edward, introduce yourself. This is Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Farley, and I write the Phantom Stallion series and other stuff, but I'm mainly talking about the Phantom Stallion. And my books are about Northern Nevada. They're fact-based fiction. They're about our real wild horses. I spend a lot of time on the range, and I am at the computer with my dog Willow, and I am happy that my series has been relaunched with new covers and things like that. And the main character's diary. So, wild horses, ranch life, the conflict between civilization and the wild. That's what I write about. So, that's my 2 minutes, pretty much. There we go.
And I'm very excited because there's a whole generation of kids who love the Phantom Stallion books. And to think that they are going to be reissued is just really fabulous for horse-loving boys and girls everywhere. So, as opposed to Terry, my name is Polly Holyoke, and I write rather fantasy magic-based books about flying horses. And my story, Skyriders, is inspired by the Pegasus myth and the American Pony Express. I used to teach Colorado history, and the Pony Express, I think, is just one of those fascinating episodes. You know, it really only lasted 18 months, but to have young riders riding day and night, oftentimes 80 miles an hour.
I wrote in the rewrite.
Put that in there. There we go. And, you know, 4 horses, I mean, the 80 miles is a long time to be on a horse's back, riding as fast as you can. So I've always been fascinated by that. So it's the Pony Express meets the Pegasus myth. I had a picture book about flying horses when I was a little kid, and what I really came away from was how much it would be fun to have my own Pegasus. So the nice thing about writing books is you get to, you know, write out your fantasies as you go out. So my series is with Viking children's books, and it really tackles it does get into that special relationship between girls and horses and boys and horses. And in my book, these horses actually can speak. They were given sentience, so they think more like humans than most horses do. And they are their riders, Skyriders, best friends and companions. And in that partnership, these young people end up saving their world from the terrible Chimera, which is actually what the terrible monster that the original Pegasus was tamed and captured by Bellerophon to fight Chimera, which has the head of a monster, the head of a serpent, and the head of a lion. So that's where the Greek mythology comes in. Anyway, I'm having a ton of fun with this, and I just love what this whole festival is doing and the message it has about how important Mustangs are and horses are to human beings. And I am going to pass it over to Randall.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Randall Ford. I'm the husband and partner of author MD Ford, who is the author of these children's books. So far we have 7 children's books, and these are children's picture books. And children's picture books originally started to be about rodeo. My wife grew up rodeoing in Arizona, and can't so much ride it anymore, so now she wanted to make sure that she could bring awareness to rodeo and keep rodeo alive in the upcoming generation. So we're up to 7 books now. It's the Walking Horse Rodeo series, and that's because the very first book, which is way over here somewhere, the very first book is about a girl who dreams of becoming a barrel racer. Normally I say this at the end for a surprise, but at the end of the book is where you see her on her rocking horse in her bedroom, and the whole book is about her dreaming of being a barrel racer. And another cool thing, one of the cool things we did was we added in, with our illustrator, we added in a little thing at the end where there's a hidden rocking horse somewhere in the book. And so at the end, we always ask, did you find a rocking horse? Now, the most current one, which is our rodeo queen book, this one right here, that was kind of easy because at the very end there's a big pageant happening where they're deciding who's the rodeo queen, and there's a rocking horse on every table. But we thought that was kind of creative of our illustrator. We'll talk more about making the books in a few minutes. But yes, my wife grew up again rodeoing and wanted to write about it, and that's where these books come from. We have more in the process, so I see my time is counting down, so I will pass it over to this great gentleman here.
Well, good morning. My name is Papa Mike Cassidy, and I guess I'm the adult-based writer. The book that I end up writing, and I say it that way because I seldom read a book. So when this situation came up, and I was asked to, or suggested that I should write a book, that was really eye-opening to me. I am one of the Mustangers, actually one of the original when Lisa and Theo went across the United States from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast. I rode with Lisa, when she was in the area of Ohio and then eventually in California. Last year this time I was a Mustanger with the other 5 Mustang trainers that show alternative methods of calming and taming and bringing Mustangs around. I happen to have what we call a pacer, and he just wanted to pace around and around and around. And we had 3 days to try to bring them around, and we have what's called The Way. The book is called The Way We Work with Mustangs and Horses. And the reason it came about was the Mustang that I had was very hyper, very anxious, very fearful. But what ended up happening was he ended up laying down about 3-4 feet right in front of me and fell asleep. When people saw...
30 seconds for this time.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're
Oh, I didn't know we were done.
good. You got 2 minutes.
You're on the clock. When I got to the last day, I ended up sitting in the middle of the round pen, and that young Mustang came and laid down and fell asleep, which drew plenty of people. And when we got all said and done, and I give all the credit in the world to Lisa Durson, she strongly suggested that I write a book on the technique and the method or the system series program that we use to get these Mustangs in a bonding situation. So I ended up in January writing the book. I had no intentions of writing one, and we can talk about the technique and how I ended up getting this odyssey done.
Fabulous, thank you. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk a little bit is why we all believe that relationship between human beings and horses and even animals in general, why that's so important to each one of us and why we want to write about it. And back over to Terry, she gets to go first.
Can we do 2 minutes again?
Yes,
2 minutes.
2-minute rides.
Just like wild horses, 2 things that are really, really important to kids, and I write for a middle grade reader, so think of yourself as an 8th grader or a 7th grader. 2 things that are important are freedom, but also family. They're at that middle place. And so I write, I think that kids like the books I write, and they tend to. They're in 27 countries, over 1 million books sold. But the reason they like it is because they can't drive yet. They can't go any place without a parent. But if they can get on a horse, they have that illusion of total freedom. And they can ride with mane and hair blowing in the wind. They feel as if they are free. And that horse is also part of their family. But they can also go back to their human family. And that's what most of these books look at. And I think talking to animals, horses, dogs, cats, hamsters, is part of what a middle grade or younger person likes to do. So that's why I think, and you know what? It's true for adults too. Hey, Bob, you heard the animal part.
Perfect timing.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I'd follow up on that. Yes, I was a 7th grade girl when I had my first horse. She was a quarter horse thoroughbred, and galloping that horse around the prairie outside of Denver was some of my most freeing moments. And I just didn't realize that was so important to me. I think there will always be dog books, and there will always be horse books, because kids need to feel like there's somebody out there who really understands them and accepts them. Right? Horses don't judge. They might be kind of ticked at you if you don't feed them on time or if their shoes don't fit, but they're not going to get mad at you, and they accept and they love, and that is something so important for kids. Just the way I think horses would be way cooler, but dogs and cats and that kind of friendship, that's just something that gets kids through those very difficult years. 10 to 14 is just a miserable time. I think very few of us would want to go back to. But then on into high school, I know my kids, we ended up fostering Chihuahua puppies. They're just awful dogs, but my kids love them. And just to sit on the couch with those dogs, they didn't fetch, they didn't play, but they gave my daughter some unconditional love. So I think that we will always need books about animals, and they'll mean a lot to kids.
Obviously, I have to echo both of those. My wife, recently we've been reflecting. We have 6 kids, they're all grown up. And we've been recently reflecting on kind of where our life is and where we want to go from here. And she asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And when you were a kid? And I said, either a pilot, an astronaut, or a rancher. And I said, I didn't make it to the moon. I said, and I'm too old to get a commercial pilot's license, so it's time to be a rancher. And she said, well, what made you say that? And as I thought about it, my earliest memory is when I was on a horse with my dad when I was 3. And I remember going, I grew up in the military, so it wasn't around my grandparents a whole lot. But every time we went back to my grandpa's farm, he'd wake me up at 5 in the morning. Okay, let's go out and milk the cows and take care of the animals. And he had some horses in the pasture. And there's a connection that comes with animals, period. And maybe that's part of the reason why I've liked being in Boy Scouts all my life, because I like going into nature, I like being in nature, and I like being around animals. And my wife, part of the reason she started writing, part of the benefit of writing these books, and I mentioned about this first book, I'm not sure on time, I'll be quick. But this first book about her horse, this first book that she wrote, The Red Racer's Dream, this is about her and her horse Hank. And she was growing up, and she grew up in a very difficult family environment, and she attributes her surviving that environment to her horse. Now, mind you, there are times that she would be daydreaming on the back of her horse and not be paying attention, and the horse turned and she didn't, and she went over the fence. And she says that he literally looked at her and made that, laughed at her and said, "Stupid." She said she thinks she heard him say stupid, and she got it and said, "Yeah, it was." But she loved that horse, and he got her through her childhood.
Well, we're back to the adult base, and the book that I read, that I authored and put together, was really put together to help people when they get stuck. And in 2017, my daughter and I, we got our first Mustang. His name is One Horse's Journey. His barn name is Journey. And I had been working with problem horses way before then. And so when we got Journey, it made me look at things differently. Basically, the book itself, the foundation of the book is more about horse psychology and the relationship than it is the mechanics and the techniques of training. And the foundation of my horsemanship really comes from my relatives up on the Rosebud Sioux Reservation. I had an Uncle Albert Whitehorse, who was, I guess, what you might consider one of the horse whisperers, but I always kid and said Uncle Albert was a horse whisperer, but he carried a 2x4. But he didn't really, literally do that. The idea was that he tried to relate to the horse rather than train the horse. And when things didn't go exactly like they were supposed to, he had other methods to help them along. And the foundation of the book is a saying that he gave to me, and the saying was, see what they see, think what they're thinking, and you will have the horse. So it was about horse psychology and the mental process more so than the mechanics and the techniques of pressure and release and approach and retreat and direct pressure. And that's when, in 2017, when we got Journey, I realized I wanted to make a change in how I approached and addressed the work with the Mustangs and the horses themselves. And what we have found since 2017, worked with approximately 40 different Mustangs of all different training levels, where a Mustang owner or trainer, they got stuck. And I would get a phone call, and the question was, can you help me? And the answer is yes. And the sidebar there was, people, how do you know? And I said, because it's not about the mechanics, it's about reading the horse and reading the Mustang, and that's what we picked it up from there. So what we put in the book is the different approaches of how we get started and how we work through this whole thing. And Team Pop and Mike, I've been all over the country and worked with Mustangs that people have had for 10 years, and they're stuck. And we spend 4 days with them, and next thing you know, that Mustang's just following that person around in the pasture. It's not magic, it's not mystic, it's not mental telepathy, it's the ability to read and understand the Mustang rather than just to go straight forward into round penning and driving and so forth and so on. And people have a definite appreciation, and that's how I ended up writing the book. I thought people knew when I knew, and then I realized they didn't know when I knew, and so it was the opportunity to share.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Also talking about that relationship between human beings and horses and building on some understanding. So, because this panel really is about how to write horse books, we know there's some people that might want to watch this and learn a little bit more about the different paths to publishing. And so, Terry and I are going to talk about traditional publishing, which is where you sell the book to a New York publisher, probably through an agent. And then the gentlemen are going to talk about independent publishing, which is another very valid, very exciting way that's kind of changing the whole publishing world. When you write the book yourself and you publish it yourself and you sell directly to the public. So Terry is much more successful and much further along than I am. I would just say that unfortunately now, if you want to sell fiction, you have to get a literary agent. 80% of the fiction out of New York, published by the big 5 publishers as they call them, are from agented writers. So you don't send in something to an editor directly anymore. You really get to send them to agents. And then they know which editors like what stuff. So they know which editors might really want a horse book. But you have to do your homework. And I would recommend you go to the internet and you figure out how to query an agent. You write a query letter that describes you and why you should write this book, what your project is, how many words it is. Definitely don't be approaching an agent until your project is finished. You look very unprofessional if you send your book to a proposal to an agent before it is actually finished. So that's the agent part of this. And I think the other great advantage, of course, is all the promotion and the reviews. But I'm going to let Terry take a shot, and then you can hand it back to me.
I'm trying to get the time right, so I'm not a
Two
piano
things at once.
hog.
Oh, there we go.
Okay,
She's
you're good. Here. Nudge me if I go over. I'm going to do this like I did with my kids at the dinner table while they were in elementary school. Best and worst. Let's start with the worst. Okay? The worst part of writing with a traditional publisher is rejection. I cannot tell you. Yes, I've been successful, but I think it's hitting the right editor on the right day who bonds with my book. I've had tons of rejections. I remember sitting in the car crying over one, and my 2-year-old daughter said, "At least they didn't say shut up." And to her, shut up was about the worst thing you can say to someone. So they didn't say shut up, and I did find an editor who was a former dressage rider, and that was my agent. My agent knew who to send horse books to. I had one rejection with her, as I had many rejections before that, and then she found the right person to love the Phantom Stallion, and that person asked if it could be a series. And I got that call in the classroom. I was teaching high school English, and I was talking to I answered, they rang it through. I talked to my agent, and I started blushing, and my students were going, "Oh, Miss Farley, is that your boyfriend?" But I said yes. I said yes, it could be a series, and that is the good. Okay, that is the good part of publishing. That somebody else shares your vision and can see a future for it beyond story. And I'm not a numbers person. When they asked me how long they were all going to be, I didn't know. Turned out they were going to be around 200 pages. And yes, my books are doing very well, but there have been some horrible dry spots. And you have to, unlike independent publishing, you have to find somebody who you can bond with over your horse story. Thank you.
Okay, and then just kind of mechanics of this, like the good things and the bad things. The great thing about going with a traditional publisher is you instantly have a platform. It is so hard, especially if you're selling kids stories for kids. School librarians are really the key to our business. They're the gatekeepers. And it is very hard as a self-published, independently published person to reach those librarians. Whereas if you are published by HarperCollins or Viking children's books or whatever, your books are going to get sent to the big trade educational journals like School Library Journal and Kirkus and Hornbook. Those reviews are terribly important in children's fiction because the librarians look at those reviews and then they say, oh, this one's a good one, this one's a good one. They don't have time to read all the books that come out. So they trust those educational journals. So getting reviews from those are really, really important. It is very difficult to get reviewed by those if you are independently published. The one that's different is Kirkus. You can pay for a review from Kirkus, and you want to pay for that review because, again, it just raises the profile. It gives you something more to put on your website. We still have to do websites. We still have to hustle for our books, but we have this huge advantage. You write it. Will they come? I was very lucky that I just won the State Award of Florida with my Neptune. I have a C series also, and I did independently publish the last Neptune book because Disney didn't think they'd make that much money on it. I got the last laugh because I get a very nice check every month on that, yay me. But I had a platform. People knew who I was. I had thousands of kids in Florida who wanted to read that last Neptune book. If I hadn't had that, I'm not sure anybody would have found me. So we're going to turn it over to the gentleman now to tell us about the joys of independent publishing. Oh, the other thing is you have a whole team that makes your book correct. It takes forever to make sure it's grammatically correct. We went through my last Neptune book a gazillion times. So there are a lot of smart people. They're still not the same thing as editors. When we first put it out, it had 11 mistakes in it, which was just cringeworthy. So there's a second edition. I finally put it up on my website. The kids would need to send me mistakes, and I'd give them prizes. And kids found the last set of, and one librarian found all the mistakes. Okay, over to you guys. What are the advantages and disadvantages of independent publishing?
Well, advantages and disadvantages of independent publishing. The disadvantages are as these ladies have talked about, is that already established network of advertising and promotion. You have to do it all yourself. That is, as Terry said, she used to say the good and the bad. The bad part, or the most difficult part, actually, of self-publishing is the advertising and promotion. That is the most challenging part because, honestly, my wife and I, we do 30 to 40 events a year, rodeo events, or farmers markets or fairs, as our part of promoting our books. Now, mind you, these books that we've written, we get almost everywhere we go. We get, there's never been something like that. That's so awesome. It's great you're doing that. Nothing like that could ever been done. And so, I mean, there's lots of kids' books about animals, but about rodeo. And so we always get that, we get that a lot. But that doesn't help, get to 1 million books, or stuff like that. Now, the challenge, now, mind you, there's different ways to do independent publishing. There's people that do the entire book all by themselves. They do the editing, they do the illustrations, and they do front to back all by themselves. Now, when I hesitate to use the word we publish through Amazon, I like to say we print through Amazon. Publishing, really, all the word publish means is the first date that your book is available to the public. That's all. I actually had to look that up. That's what when they asked them, what would your publishing date? The first date was available to the public. Whether that was us going to an event or whether that was whatever avenue you used to make it available. Now, we print through Amazon. Since then, I have found a printer that can be competitive with Amazon and actually give you a little better price. So we get our author copies from that printer. But the process, one of the things that when my wife said, okay, I want to do these, I want to write, I want to do these books. And one of the things I told her, I said, well, I have one condition. I said, we're going to be professional about it. So we actually have a professional editor. She's a retired school teacher, taught elementary school, but also taught middle school English. And she actually worked for a traditional children's publisher as an editor while she was in school. Now she's retired and just does it for herself. She and my wife bounce off, and she helps edit the book and put the editing together to where it's in a children's book style. And now we also have a professional illustrator. And the illustration process isn't quick. It takes about 3 months for him to illustrate our books. But now there's other things that are part of the process too. You have concept, you have editing. Then the first thing you want to do is submit your copyright to the copyright office so that you have control of that and no one can take it from you. Then your next step, if you're doing a book like we do, which is children's picture books. These ladies, I think, are chapter books, right?
They're yes, very grown up chapter books.
Okay.
They're great.
Okay. But
they're long.
So the
the
next level below this would be board books. The next level above this would be chapter books, as primarily 8 to 12-year-olds and then you jump up to their books. But the next step after that is going to be you have an illustrator, and that's a process. But I told her, I said, we want these books to look professional so that we can be able to compete and win awards and be able to get to that level. But there's also that part in the front of your book that has all the critical information about your book. That's called your CIP book. We have someone that does that. For them, the publisher does that. We had to find someone that does that. We had to find someone that will do what we call the graphic design, which is take what the illustrator sends her and take the words, put it all together, take the CIP block, take everything else, and put it together in a format that we can then publish a book. So that, but like I said, there are some people that choose to do that, almost all that process by themselves. That's up to them. It all depends on what they want at the end. My wife and I agreed that if we're going to do this, we want it to look like it could look professional and be able to win an award. And we won several awards. And that's where we're at. So, and there's challenges along the way.
And that does cost money also.
It does cost
it's
money.
not a very big pie, and you are dividing it. But then again, at the end, he gets to keep a much bigger piece of the pie. We get 5%, 7% per book. You are getting,
Well, from Amazon, we only get about 5%, but when we sell our books, we only pay the price of an author copy, so we're getting 70%, as opposed to that part. But anyways, so yeah, but the editing costs money, the copyright costs money. The LCCN is free, which is your Library Commons Control Number. If you want to be in a library, any library, you have to have that number. A lot of independent authors don't know that, so they don't know that they can't get their book in a library. Of course, your illustrations cost money, and then the graphic design costs money. Now, the independent publishing part, it costs money in the respect that you load everything on Amazon now. There's I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Ingram Spark. Okay, as an independent publisher, I can be on Ingram Spark too, but it costs $50 for each version of my book that I put on Ingram Spark. So I got to pay for that too. But that also allows me to be able to be in some of those journals or some of those areas where librarians can see it, or Barnes & Noble or Walmart.com or those other big places. They see it from there and go, and so you can actually order our books off of those websites, but it comes from Ingram Spark and it's published that way.
there's a little trade-off here also, just to jump in about pricing. So when you write books as long as Terry as I do, and I do, this is more expensive for Amazon to publish. There's so much more material in this than there is a picture book. So the price, you can make more money selling picture books because it doesn't cost as much to produce them. This you have to charge more because they are longer and they cost more. So there's a lot of sort of thinking and balancing going on. I'll get back to you.
I'm sorry. I think I've kind of answered your question about what the process is. There's a lot that goes into it. A lot of people don't realize how much goes into this whole process. We've actually had a few traditional publishers come to us and say, hey, we'd like to buy your series. And what else is going on? But then we say, okay, what kind of control are we going to have? We want this control, this control, this control. Oh no, we can't do that for you. Or else it would go away. Because we want our illustrator to illustrate it because he knows what we're looking for, and he's already done it. And we want our editor to edit it because she knows what we want. So there's certain things that we say, this is what we want. But eventually we'll find one and say yes. Maybe I'll go back and maybe we'll say yes.
But it is really lovely to have control over the process.
I'm sorry, I think I have too much time.
No, that's a good explanation. It's
how he published this.
Independent publishing is complicated.
There was a disc jockey, radio guy, Gary Burbank, up down in Cincinnati. He had this expression, honk, honk, your time is up. I really wanted to say it, and I thought, no, I better not.
I can go on all day. So
I already got that. That's why I'm down here, a fish out of water anyway. Gee, I wish I could give you the complexity of publishing a book, but I cannot. Advantages and disadvantages, I have I don't have any idea. Because what I did is in January of 2024, after the fall of 2023, doing the Mustang Summit, and people coming up asking, do you have the DVDs or a CD or a book of how you do what you do? And I said, no, it's all up here. And Team Papa Mike is my daughter, April Michelle, my granddaughter, Brittany, and then a young lady named A.D. Gross, who was about 12 years old, and who's now 16, and worked with me in how we work with Mustangs. And in January of this year, I decided, you know what? I'm going to give this a run. I'm going to try to write this damn book, because it just seemed to be the thing that people wanted to see. And so I handwrote the whole thing and laid it out on the dining room table and stepped back and looked at it and realized what a mess. And someone had told me that Amazon had a program for publishing a book. So I immediately went into Amazon, even before I started writing it, because I needed help. Now, I've been in the sign industry doing custom signage my entire business career of 40 years, and I do a lot of design work myself. So I wasn't worried about, and I think yesterday there was some comment about, well, basically yours is a word book, there's no pictures. Well, there are pictures. And I was able to take the Amazon program and write a book. And what I did is I hand wrote it, and then I put it on my computer, and then I gave it to 2 people that were non-horse people, and I gave it to 2 people that were horse people. And the purpose there was for them to edit and look at it and fix the grammar, and then the horse people would make suggestions on how I proceed. And then I went into Amazon and used their format. And all I can tell you is if you're someone like myself, a fish out of water, unlike these people here who have all the professional know-how, Amazon writing a book is a perfect place to go. It gives you the format, it tells you how to set up the table of contents, it tells you how to set up whether you want a 5x7 or a 6x9 page. It helps you with the front and back covers. For the absolute, I wouldn't even give myself credit to being a novice. I would just say a wanderer in the sand, in the desert. But I was able to put the whole thing together. I gave it to the 4 people. Then Amazon sends you back a author's proof, and it has a band across the front, the cover, and the back. And then I gave that to the 4 people again, and we went through it. And I wrote it in January. It was published in April. But it was. I'm a focused kind of person. It's like tunnel vision. I want to get it done, and I have the pictures, and I edited the pictures, and we put it together and formatted it. And there's no. I didn't write the book to sell 1 million copies. I wrote the book to help people. People that I would get that phone call. Hi, are you Papa Mike? Yeah, well, so-and-so said you might be able to help me with my Mustang. And this is that book. And a lot of times, now that I have the book, I'll tell people, you need to order the book, or to buy the book through Amazon, read it twice. Once just to enjoy the read, and the second time is to try to start figuring out things. And then I'll come to wherever you are, and I go all over. I've been up to New England, I've been to Texas, to Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, working with people and their problem Mustangs. And the problem isn't the Mustang, the problem is that people just don't understand how to approach them. And in the book it tells you, you really only get one chance at a first impression. Because when you approach that Mustang for the very first time, it can go way south on you, and it becomes an imprint on the Mustang. And a lot of times, the problem Mustangs that I go work with, that's basically what has happened. But what was fun? None. It was a real effort. But I can tell you that if you're new to the concept of writing a book, all I can tell you is that Amazon has a program that makes it fairly simple for you to understand and to walk through. They have it set up. Of course they get the royalties. I don't care. The book is a whopping $14.75 on Amazon, and you pay the shipping. But I didn't write it for that purpose. I wrote it for the actual hands-on people that work with Mustangs and horses, and they got an issue that they can't seem to get past. And sure, you can call me and we can work out a fee, and you can fly me down to Texas or Florida or wherever, and within 3 or 4 days generally, we've got things rocking and rolling and moving forward. But at the same time, you need to buy the book so that you can continue that process of the way to understand what tolerance versus acceptance, what trust is. This is more a non-fiction type of approach than what we're seeing. And these are all great writers. But like I said, you're lucky if you can get me to read a book. And so to write a book was pretty awesome exercise. But it turned out good, and I think the response I get back from people more than anything else, people send me a message, they call, is that you actually write a book like you talk. So when we're sitting across from each other and you're telling me what your issues are with your Mustang, and I reply back to you where you might go with them, that's how the book is written.
So I think what Mike is also bringing up brilliantly is, why do you write the book? You need to know why you write your book. And so in my case, I am writing to entertain and make kids think. But you are writing something very specific. You're really writing something that's going to help people understand how to form bonds with a Mustang and train them. So that's a really nice thing that we did when we talk about I don't know, why do you write a book?
I get to hang out with horses and write it off. No, seriously, when I was talking about best and worst, one of the very best things about writing the Phantom Stallion books, and I wrote a nonfiction book, is hanging out with people who have different little slices of the pie as it applies to horses. Paleontologists, kids, I've worked with therapy horses and the people who benefit from them, and that all goes back to my books. You know what I did? I wrote the books I wanted to read when I was a kid.
Yes.
And their adventure, and when I was growing up, which was a long time ago, almost all the adventures were had by boys. In my books, girls and boys have the adventures, have the tough times with horses, and, fall off horses and have to get back to the ranch, things like that. I write books because they're just part of my brain. I probably would have been burned at the stake in another time, because I hear these voices that are voices of characters that don't exist in real life.
Yes.
So that's why I write books.
Well, they have help for that.
I know, there's a fine line between being an artistic author type, but yes, you do have voices in it. And honestly, I write to reach kids. I write about environmental issues quite a bit, but I write to make money, and I think that that's another reason to write a book. I have 2 daughters who are social workers. They're never going to be able to buy houses in today's market, and I'm still at it because I've helped put them through college and put them through grad school, and darn it, I'm going to help them make that down payment. But there are a lot of good reasons why to write, very valid reasons to write. I thought maybe we could turn it over to our audience and see if they have any questions for us at this point about writing stories about horses, animals.
I have a question. I'm a filmmaker and a screenwriter, so I'm curious about your process. I think, Mike, you're the one that's the closest to this question because it's a question of authenticity. So in writing, it's not just writing a story about the human beings. It's also going to be the authentic voice of the horse in there. So it's not an anthropomorphic view of the horse. It's a communication. It's a relationship, right? So I'm just wondering what your process is in getting to that point in your storytelling.
So I'll jump in just because mine's really unique. I actually have talking horses. I watched a lot of Mr. Ed a long time ago, and I love Dr. Dolittle. All my stories seem to have talking animals, and that is definitely anthropomorphizing. It's definitely projecting human thought onto an animal. It works for kids, but I really have thought about what would my sky steeds what are their issues? How do they think? How do they think differently from human beings? But I definitely had to make some leaps and probably strain a lot of believability. I pull it off, but still, I'm a little uncomfortable with it sometimes because I do think animal intelligence is very different from human intelligence, and it should be respected. I wrote about dolphins, and that was just fascinating. I think they are equally as intelligent as we are. It's just that their intelligence is different. And to try and convey that on the page is a challenge. I would say research really helped.
Just real quickly, I spend a lot of time, as much time as I can, with horses and horse people. When I write fiction, I write from what I call a very close third person. So, right here. So whatever my characters see, and they are horse girls, they are horsemen, whatever they see in a horse, I put on the page. So if this horse is flattening her ears against her neck, my character is going to know what the heck that means. Same thing if she's at school and she drops a pencil to talk to her friend who's in the next row. If she looks up or she hears the teacher clear her throat, I'm right here. That's what I see. And that's part of my process as far as conveying the horse. I don't get in their head. The one book that I'm still writing, which is I wrote for My Mustang Ghost Dancer, hasn't sold yet. But I promised her when I adopted her that I was going to write her story as far as I could tell it. And it's called Across the Sagebrush Sea. If it ever comes out, I think it's the best thing I've written. Unfortunately, so far, only my agent agrees. So.
And where my wife is concerned, everything she writes about, she either actually did or she or experienced in some way growing up in rodeo. Now, she's never ridden a bull. However, she's
She's a smart woman.
She is smart woman, yes. But for example, rodeo queen. She's never been a rodeo queen, but she did compete once in a rodeo queen contest. But what she does is she then goes and talks to and interviews all the people. She understands the principles and she understands what that particular sport involves. And then she goes and she talks to the people that do that sport to get more details, more understanding, more clarity, so that when she writes the story and from the children's perspective, they understand from the children's perspective. Any thoughts?
Well, I don't have much imagination on this part of it. When I went to college, I majored in. I was going for an engineering degree, and I majored in physics and minored in math, and I did 4 years of a five-year program. And at the end of the fourth year, I said, "This is wrong. I am not that person." But what I did take was an elective course in psychology. And I fell in love with it. But this was in my third year, and I realized, damn it, it's too late. But I would have changed. The whole foundation of the way is based on horse psychology. And what I did is I took what I know about human psychology from that course, and I've always been a person to study other people, to get a read on them. And that's helped me in everything that I do. And I'm guilty of doing it. And I find myself stopping, stop analyzing and reading that person. But what it helped me do is to get a read on the Mustangs and the horses. When someone calls up and says, I have a problem with a domesticated horse, well, tell me what your problem is. And even before I get there, I have a feeling. And then I walk in, and then you start doing the read. And you start getting a feel for it. And you start getting that understanding. And how do you take that understanding of that horse or Mustang, and that's how I differentiate them, and how do you help them? And that's what it becomes about. So I can't really relate to how we take the horse and communicate that through a book or through a screen. But when an owner asks me where we're at, and I can tell them, you're going to be okay. Well, how do you know that? You just watch. And it is about the read and the understanding, more so than anything else for this. This is more reality, I guess, is the way I would look at it.
Absolutely, that's what we'll do.
Question. Is that complete, or do you think there's going to be a follow-up?
On this, that's interesting.
Is there going to be a sequel?
I said I would never write another book after this one. And people ask that same question. And this is all about, for those people that are familiar, is more about the initial groundwork. I'm doing a 12 o'clock presentation on the book itself. And I have no preconception when I'm working with an untouched Mustang. I go into the pen, and then I will tell you at the same breath, I have no preconception of what people call a problem Mustang. I'm stuck. I've had this horse for 3 years. I've had it for 5. I've worked with a Mustang that a person has had for 10 years. And they've passed it off to 2 other trainers. And the trainers came back and said, get rid of it, it's no good. And then I went there and I worked with that Mustang for 4 days. Probably 12 sessions, short sessions, 30 minutes. When I got finished with what I was doing over the 4 and 5 days and passed that on to the owner, the only way that they could do anything with that Mustang was to herd it from the open pasture into a small paddock and then try to get a halter on it and try to get a rub or touch or do whatever they wanted to do. After 4 or 5 days working the way, the Mustang was out in the open pasture just following that owner around. Now you go, well, that's magical. No, it's not. It's about the read, the understanding. It's not about the mechanics of pressure and release, approach and retreat. Those are all necessary. Question?
I'd like to talk to you as a writer and a trainer.
Sure.
Okay. My husband and I are trick trainers, always
Yes.
have been, and we've written a couple of books. And what I find these days is the crowd that is gentler than thou. Everybody is gentler than the next one. And there's even a big crowd of people out there, I'm sorry to say this, but mostly women that think the horse should make the decision all the time. The horse gets to go with you if he wants to go. He gets to be haltered if he wants to. How do you deal with that?
Well, you need to come to 12 o'clock. And it's like, where do I begin on this mess? Okay, so atypical, the traditional training of pressure and release, approach and retreat. So I get the Mustang basically pinned up against the panel, and I want to get that first touch. Now I'm going to explain this to you because it kind of goes with what you said, and I apologize to the others.
Well, let's just do it in a minute, because we need to wrap up, it's almost our time.
Because it's really about the people and the perception.
It is, but the Mustang and the horse tell you a ton, but we don't read it. We look past it, and I'm going to give you a real simple example. If the horse is 6 feet away from me, the Mustang is, and I start to approach that Mustang, and that Mustang slightly turns its head away, just ever so slightly that most people don't see it, I immediately back off, and you're going to go, that's pressure release. No, it's not. What it is, that Mustang just told me, I'm not comfortable with what you're doing. So what I do is I say to the Mustang, I see you're not comfortable by backing off. Let's try again. And we go through that process, and now I come back to that step, and the Mustang says, all right. And then I take another step closer, and they turn ever so slightly, or they change their body language. Something is telling me that's the communication that we work through on the way. Eventually I get to that point, because we start to communicate, I'm saying, I see you're not comfortable, therefore I'll back off, let's try again. And we get to that point where I'm into that first touch, and then I talk about the first touch at 12 o'clock on how we get to this point.
I think what you're saying is, you didn't say it, but what I'm hearing is people that belong to that crowd that I just explained to you, which I'm not one of them, by the way, they don't have the personal skills to do what you're doing, so therefore it's all fluff.
I would tell you this. You say they don't have the personal skills. I think they look past it.
Okay.
I do, and I know this is, you go into the barn. You want to ride your horse. You walk in, you go to the stall door, you go in, you put a halter or lead rope on, you put them on the cross ties, you put the saddle on, and off you go. Not once did you go to that stall door and say, hey horse, how you feeling today? And the horse goes, I'm going to tell you something, I got a stiff cycle. I ate something that doesn't really agree with me right now, and my head's not exactly where I need to be. Could we kind of pass on this? We don't do that. We just get in there, and we saddle them up, and off we go. It's so important. The psychology is the read. And that's, like I said, at noontime, I can get into that, and I apologize.
No, that's the question asked. Any other questions? Because we're supposed to kind of clear out by 11, I think.
Yeah.
And come up to us because we are going to be outside
Yes,
at the
you're
table.
right.
So for the Equus Film and Arts Festival, here is our 2 cents plus on how to write meaningful books, fiction and nonfiction, for kids and grown-ups. And thank you for being with us today. Rock, we're done.
Thank you.
And I'll have more books to come.
I don't know where Julianne is, but
No, she's off with the horses.
she'll figure it out.
She'll figure it out. Nice job, baby. Did you take a picture? Oh,
I took a picture of you.
did you, of us? Can we
I'll
ask
be
you
there.
can we ask you for that? Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, nice job, guys.
Thank you.
This little dog just cracked me up.
Yes.
Would you be part of their animal?
I have no idea, and I ain't touching it. I struggle enough with this thing.
Randall, great explanation of independent publishing.
I know.
You should teach a class. Really, you
Well,
should teach a class.
Actually, my wife went through a class. I didn't get a chance to mention that when I could have a shot at the Cox.
Yeah.
My wife went through her class.
Anyway, I thought that was very useful. Thank you. P.B. Holyoke, H-O-L-Y.
Oh, even better. Yes.
At gmail.com. Terry, do you want to give her your email so she
Sure.
can get that picture?
It's Terry, T-E-R-R-I, at phantomstallion.com. T-E-R-R-I, at phantomstallion.com.
Everybody's uses this stuff. Trying to figure out which one to stop.
My name is Annika. Annika, that's right. I was thinking of Annika and Tom. In Volkswagen. The only
She had a horse that carrier you put up on the horse, not powerful.
I loved.
I'm ready to buy my book, because you're my screen.
She was one of my.
I know.